Welcome to Kaho Na, a podcast by the Mind Diaries and the Wellbeing Trust. Kaho Na brings unhurried, honest conversations on mental well-being, exploring the complexities of life, work, and identity with depth, empathy, and hope. We have recently come out with our latest edition for May June. It's a travel special, and I have a very special guest today who will help us understand why travel is so important for us. So it's not just something we do randomly, it also helps our mind. So we have with us Dr. Shachi Patel. Dr. Patel is a Britain trained clinical neuropsychologist, psychotherapist, and founder of the Mind Clinic. She specializes in anxiety, OCD, trauma healing, relationship conflicts, and rebuilding self worth. Dr. Patel helps individuals move beyond survival mode by retraining the brain, regulating the nervous system, and transforming limiting life narratives. She has also delivered a TEDx talk on neuroplasticity at TEDx MSU Baroda, making brain science practical and accessible for everyday healing and growth. With expertise spanning medicine, clinical psychology, and brain and behavior neurology, Dr. Patel brings both scientific insights and deep empathy to conversations on emotional resilience, relationships, and personal transformation. Dr. Patel, that's a long intro. Do you want to, help us get to the fun side of travel?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's a very long intro, but I'm someone who loves traveling. So yeah, I think it's a sign that we connected because I am someone who always takes breaks and takes rest as something very important part of my life. So yeah, travel matters, and I'll definitely let you know and give you insights on how and why it matters and what it does to the brain.
Awesome. Dr. Patel, we often think of travel as an escape, but from a psychological perspective, how does travel actually affect the mind and emotional well-being?
So basically, when we step outside the familiar environments, our brain is forced to become more present, more adaptive, and emotionally more receptive. The routines which we are usually in often puts us on autopilot, but travel interrupts the pattern. So basically, when we travel, it stimulates our curiosity, and our brain always seeks for novelty and emotional flexibility. That is where the travel helps in. So we can say that it's more of a psychological movement, and psychologically, travel can also reduce mental rigidity. It
Wow,
creates emotional distance from stressors and gives people time to reconnect with the parts जो daily routine में often suppressed हो जाते हैं.
right.
So sometimes people don't need that escapism, but they need that enough distance from the noise to hear themselves again. This is where travel helps.
Wow. So when we say somebody needs a break, it really means a break for the mind as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Why do so many people return from travel feeling mentally lighter or emotionally refreshed? What would you say really changes in the brain during new experiences?
So, like I said, the brain, thrives on novelty. Everyone likes novelty. So, newer experiences usually activates areas which are associated with dopamine or learning or attention. And that's when even small things during travel, like new smells, new language, new kind of food, landscapes, can feel mentally very energizing because that's not what we do every day.
Wow.
So travel also disrupts that receptive and repetitive stress loops which we go into every day when we are working or when we are following a routine. So when
Right.
we are stuck in the same environment every day, the brain keeps on replaying the same emotional patterns. New experiences creates what we call cognitive flexibility, the ability to think very differently, feel differently, and perceive life from a different perspective or a wider lens. So
Wow.
when people come back from travel, they feel emotionally lighter. It's not like magic, but it's the nervous system which felt better when it temporarily stepped out of the survival mode. So that is why
Awesome.
we feel, you know.
Right. So now we have an expert telling us कि छुट्टी लेना, ब्रेक लेना बहुत जरूरी है,
जरूरी
not
है,
just for
हाँ
our
हाँ.
bodies but also our minds. How
Yeah.
often do you think, Dr. Patel, one should take a break?
I think every 3 to 5 months is
Okay.
recommended. And this is my personal experience कि वो 5 महीने से ज्यादा अगर if I have a gap, I start feeling that monotony, that boss, I need something now.
Right,
So
right.
3 I'm in the good time period.
Awesome. आपको पता है ये पॉडकास्ट करने के लिए आई वाज स्पेशली वेटिंग बिकॉज नाउ आई एम ऑन अ ब्रेक एंड आई फील सो रिलैक्स्ड ऑलरेडी.
I'm on a break now. Like I'm like already out of the office. कि मुझे
Awesome,
चाहिए
awesome.
चाहिए.
Great. So if anybody especially likes this podcast, it is because both of us are traveling right now and we are so
I
much more
know,
relaxed.
yeah. Yeah.
Great. Dr. Patel, can travel genuinely help with stress, anxiety, or burnout? Also, are
I
there
think,
limits to what travel can heal emotionally? I mean, sometimes
I
we're
think,
feeling so
yeah,
stuck, we're really feeling down in the dumps. It happens with all of
yeah,
us.
yeah.
There's high levels of stress. Some of us could be going through depression. Some of us could be experiencing anxiety. So, can travel then really help us emotionally? Because sometimes we're too exhausted to even think of, packing things, making that movement. What would you say to somebody then?
So I feel that travel will absolutely regulate the stress and burnout someone has, but I don't want people to consider travel as therapy, and it
Right,
cannot replace deeper emotional work. For example, if someone is emotionally exhausted because of chronic overwork or any kind of grief or trauma or relationship wounds, travel may provide temporary relief because the brain seeks novelty, but not the permanent healing. So pain will often follow us if it remains unprocessed.
right.
So then that is where therapy comes in. So healthy travel restores, but it cannot completely eradicate the problems. So there has to be an important difference between the two.
Wonderful. So it's very
Yeah,
crucial to know that it's like a top up. Once we're already feeling better, it only enhances that feeling,
yeah, yeah.
right? Uh, Ma'am, you've said this earlier. How does stepping away from routine and familiar environments, how does that influence self-awareness, identity, perspective? Does that also change? Because I guess when we are in our office, we could be the boss or we could be, there's hierarchy, there are different things. Does all that also help us to really look at ourselves differently?
See, our identity is usually deeply tied to our environment, the place where we play roles like a professional role or a role of a parent or maybe a caregiver or an achiever. So this becomes very automatic within the familiar settings. Travel temporarily helps us remove all these roles. And when that happens, people often meet a quieter, more authentic version of themselves, or probably they start asking these deeper questions during the travel that what do I actually enjoy, or am I enjoying the roles I'm playing, or what
Right,
kind of life actually feels meaningful to me. So that distance creates the perspective. Sometimes people also discover that the life they were rushing back to was the very thing exhausting them, or maybe
wow,
the vice versa. But the
right,
space we create absolutely gives us that power to think beyond what we actually play roles in. So वो
right.
रूटीन का ब्रेक होगा, तभी दूसरी चीजें हमें टाइम मिलेगी सोचने के लिए. बाकी there is no possibility of we sitting in office and thinking that are we happy within this role. No, we can't think that
Right.
like that. So
It will
that is where
not
the
give
change
us the right view,
time
really.
only. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Uh, so, ma'am, another thing that is really catching up is solo travel. It's often described as
Hello.
transfer.
Yeah,
Hello, can you hear me?
yeah. बीच में
Okay,
वो
no
हो गया
worries.
था.
Great. So, Dr. Sachi, solo travel is often described as transformative.
Hmm.
Psychologically, what does it teach us about ourselves?
I think solo travel, removes that dependence on familiarity. People do not have this concept still, in India where they are comfortable solo traveling. So, when someone has this solo traveling concept, they navigate uncertainty alone. They make decisions independently and sit with their own thoughts, which is usually not the case. So
Right.
psychologically, it also helps you building more self-trust and a better decision-making concept. And self-trust is one of the strongest foundation of emotional resilience. And I think it also reveals your relationship with yourself. Some people discover freedom in solitude, others realize how uncomfortable silence feels to them. So both are important insights. Solo
Right.
travel often becomes transformative because it confronts us within ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
honestly and without interruption.
Right. So do you
Yeah.
recommend somebody who's never taken, a trip on one's own? Would you recommend that to somebody?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, right. Great. Uh, Dr. Patel, does nature-based travel, mountains, beaches, forests, does that also have a different impact on mental health compared to urban travel?
I think nature has a profoundly regulating effect on nervous system. If we go back in the research, it consistently shows that natural environments lower cortisol levels as well, or might help reduce mental fatigue, improve emotional regulation, and calm overstimulated brains. So
Wow.
mountains often create a perspective because they are very big.
Mm-hmm.
Forests create that grounding and stillness that,
Wow.
it's so huge, it's so big in the acres, and we are still so small for our problems. Usually people come to us and say this, that when we see nature, we feel that हमारी problems तो कुछ है ही नहीं, the world is so big, the nature is so big.
Wow.
As similarly, when people go to beaches, they regulate through rhythmic sensory input because of the waves, the sound of waves, the
Mm-hmm.
horizons, the repetitive motions. So
Right.
urban travel can also be stimulating and culturally enriching, but nature-based travel tends to be more restorative
Okay.
emotionally.
Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Is there a difference, Dr. Patel, between mindful, slow travel and rushed checklist style tourism when it comes to emotional well-being?
A huge difference. I think
Okay.
checklist tourism often recreates the same stress patterns,
Ah,
which we
okay.
are trying to escape: constant rushing, documenting, taking pictures, finishing the itinerary, consuming, comparing
Okay.
with social media. Okay, someone has gone there, so I also have to go there and take a picture. I have to upload a picture. This is what keeps on happening nowadays. This is the scheme which is happening
Right.
everywhere. People are comparing. That is why travel has also increased. People never used to travel so much when it came to
Right.
Indian context. And then when we see slow travel, it is actually emotional absorption. People do slow travel for themselves. It
Ah,
gives the time to process beauty, rest, culture, to understand what is silence and connection. So
right.
yeah, mindful travel is not about how many places you visit or how fast you finish the itinerary,
Right.
but it is whether you were psychologically present in the place or not.
So it's
Which
important to
right now
ask
it is
oneself
like,
that.
yeah. Sorry?
So it's important to ask oneself that question, what am I traveling
Exactly.
for? Do I have too
Exactly.
big a checklist? Am I just focusing on selfies? And am I doing this for social media?
Yeah. So recently, I just read an article from someone who travels a lot, and she just wrote one thing, that people, because of digital nomadry, have been traveling to Japan left, right, and center. And
Right,
when they come back, even I have met some people, they don't even know what Japan holds, what kind of culture they hold, but they just did it because everyone else has also done it. And then
right,
they came back very tired, that बहुत rushing था, सब देखना पड़ा, but that's not actually what the agenda is for traveling. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So it's so important to then step back and think why we are doing what we are doing, right?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Dr. Patel, in today's hyper digital, constantly connected world, has travel become more for emotional? Is it more important than for emotional restoration and nervous system regulation? The fact that we are, working so hard and, trying to do so many things together, is it all the more important right now?
I think so. I mean, modern life keeps our nervous system in a state of hypervigilance and chronic activation. Like all we are always on the screens, we always have notifications, we are multitasking, and there is a lot of information overload as well. So travel, especially in intentional travel, interrupts that cycle, like we discussed before. It
Right.
gives the brain that sensory variety, physical movement, and also gives us a lot of emotional space and moment of real world presence. Actually, travel also makes us realize, if we go toward the European side, we know that they still live that slow life.
Right.
So then it just makes us, कि यार हम क्या कर रहे हैं, हमारी life कितनी fast है. So
Exactly.
that is a perfect example of how sensory variety kicks in. But this will happen if you only allow ourselves to disconnect psychologically too. You have seen people who are always on the phone on vacations also,
Right, right, right.
or they are busy, or they are always glued to social media or emails or productivity calendars. That doesn't make sense.
Of
So
course.
sometimes the most healing part of travel is simply remembering that there is life beyond urgency.
Beyond. That's
Yeah,
that's so important. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Uh,
yeah.
Dr. Patel, can travel also strengthen emotional connection and communication within families, couples, or even with friends? We see a lot of, traveling with girlfriends, traveling with the boy gang. Is that also something that can help people build, connections and communications?
I think yes, because shared experiences always creates emotional memories in brain. So when families or couples travel together, they often communicate. They might have harder conversations which they couldn't have in their monotonous life, or they might play roles which are unusual,
Right.
or maybe people laugh more, observe each other very differently. I've also seen people resolving their conflicts when they travel together, because
Wow.
the moments they create feel more emotionally alive. So definitely travel deepens the relationship within oneself and with the other one as well. Many people
Wonderful.
realize during travel what genuinely brings them peace, joy, or any kind of meaning. Connection grows where presence grows.
Wonderful. Uh, Dr.
Yeah.
Patel, what are some mindful ways people can travel so that the experience is more emotionally nourishing rather than just another distraction? What would be some ways that you'd describe?
I think the first thing I want to say is stop comparing it with someone else's itinerary. It's not always about Instagram and posting. So stop comparing everything with social media. Travel very slow. Leave room for the rest. Don't try to finish the whole country in one go. You can come back
Mm,
again.
right.
Like, avoid over scheduling, avoid, pushing the itinerary at a point where it becomes impossible to go back and forth. And I would suggest that connect with local culture very mindfully, taste their food, taste their palates. That is
Uh,
very important. Try to interact with them and understand how their culture is. Probably take a journal with you so you can write your thoughts when you are traveling, because that's the best thing happening to you. I always take better decisions when I'm traveling. So, yeah, this is a personal experience. Don't
wow.
forget to sleep well. You need to sleep well in order to travel better. Baki, you are always going to be tired. And
So
sometimes
true.
take a walk without an agenda. Like, don't follow the itinerary, just go out in the city to walk. See
Right.
how it is.
So
Yeah,
you'd say always pack your walking shoes when you're going on travel. A
absolutely.
must.
I only pack my walking shoes, zero fashion. Yeah.
Awesome. That's so lovely. Uh, Dr. Patel, is it also possible to experience the psychological benefits that you've been speaking about of travel, even through short breaks or local exploration? If somebody doesn't have time for, say, a 10-day break, a 5-day break, does a 2-day break also count? Does that help as well?
Yes, definitely. I think the main agenda we are looking forward is for novelty. So anything which our brains respond more to novelty is possible, and it will create some kind of emotional break where we will get a better way and better. Sorry, I will have to say it
That's
again.
fine. That's
मैंने
fine.
पूरा mix कर दिया.
No worries.
Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely the brain responds more to novelty and the presence than distance. So even if there is a short road trip, or even if you're visiting your फैमिली मेंबर्स या नानी के घर चले गए, दादी के घर चले गए, और यू टेक अ वॉक थ्रू
Okay,
नेचर, या फिर वीकेंड ट्रिप कर ली, it will create that novelty and break that monotony from the brain. So
wonderful,
psychological restoration is not something which is always expensive, which is always luxury, which is always a long itinerary. No, sometimes it simply requires interruption of routine and genuine presence. So when that interruption happens, you will feel better.
wonderful. Dr. Patel, if you had to describe the connection between travel and the mind in one sentence, what would you say?
I think travel reminds me that my life and my mind is very large and meaningful than the patterns and the problems I go through on everyday basis.
Wow,
And it also makes me remind that I'm just trapped somewhere. I just need to change my perspective, and that change comes by travel for me.
wonderful, great. And what would be that one message to people who are watching this podcast, for our viewers, for the Mind Diaries and the Wellbeing Trust? What would be that one message?
I would say that rest is not unproductive in this era. Slowing down is not failure, and you do not always need to earn peace. Sometimes healings begin in the moment you allow yourself to step outside of the routine, breathe, and experience life with presence again. So sometimes, आजकल ऐसा है कि अगर 2 घंटे भी हमने काम नहीं किया तो we feel unproductive कि बॉस we are not doing anything, and that is the pressure of
Right.
performance. That is what we need to let go of and come back in the era where older people were, कि नहीं करना तो मत करो, आराम से रहो, इतना
Wow.
परफॉर्म करो, because that is the most cognitive overload we have right now.
Wonderful. So step back
Yeah,
and, learn
absolutely.
to really enjoy life and breathe easy.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much for this, Dr. Patel. So now we have an expert telling us why you need a break. So, guys, I hope you're all on a break. If you're not, plan your next break. Thank you so much, Dr. Patel.
Thank you so much for having me, ma'am. Thank you.